Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I am with Sydney Arzt, the Executive Director of the Schwartz Center in downtown Dover. Anybody who's driven by it in the past 4 years have seen a dramatic change, and you ought to see the inside. Sydney, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be talking to you this morning.
Well, I'm glad to have you because my wife and I have been attending events here, and it's amazing the quality of the performances and the number of them that have taken place. Tell me a little bit about the Schwartz.
You know, the Schwartz is really a historic theater because it was created in 1901 as an opera house, and it was, I don't know what it did in 1901 to 1950 or so, but around that time it was sold to the Schwartz family, who bought old buildings up and down the East Coast. Massachusetts, there are actually some in Wilmington, here, and they turned them all into movie houses. So this was known as the Capitol Theater in the 50s and 60s and was an old movie house. As a matter of fact, Muriel Schwartz got arrested for having shown a porn movie here, Deep Throat.
Oh my gosh.
And she was arrested, and she was just a feisty, redheaded woman. Although there are some who say I am Muriel reincarnated, although we don't show porn movies anymore. No. And so it fell into disrepair really in the late 60s and early 70s. There was a movement to refurbish it and rejuvenate it. And along with help from Wesley College and Del State University in a partnership that was created, the building was refurbished upwards of $8 million, and we are operating under that same configuration right now.
I remember that process. There were some who wanted to tear it down and build a more modern building, but I know there were a lot more people said it's a historic building, it's beautiful, it represents the architecture, let's rebuild it.
We sit on the edge of the legislative district, our capital in Dover, and it would have been very inappropriate to modernize this building in the sense of its architecture. Mm-hmm. What we need to modernize and are modernizing are some of the programs that we present here. Although we do a lot of tributes to what has occurred, what has been legendary in the past, musically particularly.
Wife and I came down for the Frank Sinatra 100th anniversary.
On his birthday.
On his birthday, exactly right. And I know you've got a lot of ethnic comedians, you've got so many good things happening here.
We do, dance included. Don't forget dance.
Well, you know, we talked about the institution itself, the building itself. Tell me about you. You come out to introduce every program to welcome the audience, and I know sometimes you get a round of applause almost as if you're the opening act.
Sometimes I feel like the opening act. Or maybe it's my ability to kind of communicate directly with our audience. I think that's the value in live theater. It's a personal live interaction. Unlike technology, which tends to be singular, that is not what theater is.
How many seats?
We have 550 seats, approximately 300 plus on our main floor in the orchestra level. And then we have a mezzanine and a balcony, and that seats another 250 approximately.
And I know you have a lot of support from the community for the theater. I know that's a lot of money to raise $8 million.
Yes, and we thank those folks every day. This theater and others like it throughout the country will never be replicated again. This is not how they're being built. I call this a throwback in a way to an era of some elegance that is not necessarily included in new theater structures right now. And so it breeds a certain feeling when you walk in the door. Mm-hmm. It's a link to our past, however, our entertainment and the programs we offer are a view into the future.
So that, in fact, speaking of that, you like live theater, you mentioned that it has a certain interaction with the audience.
Yes. Well, what's often said about one of the values of theater is that it creates a social interaction, you know, and the business community is also interested in theater because we are an economic boost to the areas in which we are.
Comes under quality of life. Absolutely,
And
very
the
important.
quality of life in any community. So for downtown Dover, we are particularly important as the area gets redeveloped, redesigned, and re-energized. So we are at the source of that energy. That's how I feel.
Well, I know you have a lot of community-oriented activities here. I mean, last year there was a parade.
The Rebirth Parade.
The Rebirth Parade, okay.
Where we brought the Rebirth Brass Band from New Orleans to move throughout the streets of downtown Dover, announcing and celebrating the rebirth of this theater.
Well, I was part of the parade. I was walking around, clasping my hands. It was a little nippy out there, but it was fun.
It was nippy, wasn't it? Not like this year.
What about the mission of the Schwartz?
We wish to be and say that we are the cultural center of Central Delaware. So what we provide is innovative programming, we provide diversity in programming, and we provide access to social interaction.
And you seem to tie in well. I want to touch back on that. Tell me about your past, where this is not the first time you've been involved with theater and public shows. And
it's interesting, when my earlier life was spent as a special education teacher, and in that experience, I was always involved in community theater out of my own personal interest. And somehow, through a series of what I call life accidents, I ended up in Rehoboth Beach and opened a restaurant and nightclub. And we remained in Rehoboth for 20 years, selling it in 2006.
what was the name of it?
It was called Sydney's Blues and Jazz Restaurant. Initially, it started as a pie shop. So I learned how to be a baker first. And then it grew from a pie shop to a entertainment facility in a little tiny place that only sat 35 people. So then we moved to a larger location, which only sat 100 people, but we created this jazz and blues club.
So this was a nice transition for you.
Well, this transition was also another accident. I was just, after I sold the club, one of my good customers was involved here, and the executive director position was opening, and he said, why don't you come up and bring some of what you got here up to Dover?
Well, you certainly did. And tell me very quickly, the room that we're sitting in, it doesn't look like the theater.
No, it's not the theater. We have two ballrooms similar to this. One is not carpeted because it's meant to be a place for lots of eating or dancing. But it is called the McNinch Ballroom. It was, honored by a doctor here in Dover, Dr. James McNinch.
And people can come here in the intermission and actually buy food.
Yes, we
and
set
drinks
up a
and such.
bar here, and
Okay.
we serve snacks and bar stuff.
How can people find out how to rent this facility?
To call at 302-678-5152 and just press that button for the rental office, leave a message, we'll call back.
And we'll have your website on the screen. So I want to thank you very much. I've been with Sydney Arzt, Executive Director of the Schwartz Center for the Arts here in Dover. Thanks so much for being with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
We'll be right back.